We're going to go international vis-a-vis domestic pathway students. We're going to talk about some statistics. The class will be mainly focused on GS 120L, but the reality is applicable to just about anything you teach. And then my wife is going to, more importantly, tell us about how to teach effectively. She has been teaching for a long time, and she has a lot of experience, so hopefully we can all learn from that. So with that, I'm going to talk about what it is. You already heard President Gilbert describe it quickly, and some of you may have already heard about it. But for those of you who haven't, let me tell you a little bit more about it. For many years, the church leaders have truly considered how they can expand the reach of church education across the globe. But in November of 2015, under the direction of the Elder Kim B. Clark, they presented what was a concept approval to the Church Board of Education, which is the first presidency and a few members of the 12 and a couple others. But the initiative says that the church educational system will seek to provide opportunities for education to members of the church wherever the church is organized. Well, who can tell me where the church is organized? It's a lot easier to say where it is not organized, but even then, there are groups that meet with church members. So the reality is that this is truly global. When it first came out, and Elder Clark shared it with us, the word global was not there. But as he polished it and started fine-tuning it, it became the Global CES Initiative, Education Initiative. So the resulting initiative is intended to help many more members of the church to get access to quality education, of which you're part of now, as you've heard, the Miracle Pathway and online learning. The initiative is guided by the experience with Pathway. So that's why I wanted to highlight the initiative in context of Pathway. You will see some things that are, and sorry, I thought we were going to have a bigger screen, but basically priesthood leaders working in tandem with church service missionaries, online classes, the students are right at the center, and gatherings at institutes. We know we utilize other buildings across the globe as well, meeting houses, multi-purpose buildings. And the specific opportunities will include the following: religious education, which President Gilbert emphasized, secondary education, instruction, and support, English language instruction, which I will highlight a little further. Pathway will continue to operate in the way it operates now. Technical and skills-based training and certificates. We are partnering with LDSBC heavily, and we'll do more of that. Associates, bachelor's, and master's degrees. Even the big brother BYU will play in the master's degrees arena. So that is what it is, but how does it relate to Pathway? Well, as I mentioned, English language instruction is part of what the initiative entails. And as you probably have experienced thus far, whether you are teaching for the first time or you have been teaching for a while, we have different levels of students as far as linguistic capabilities. And furthermore, because we have changed some of the assessment in the past 3 years, it is now actually more evident that some students are a lot lower than perhaps before, or than we would want them to be, so they can fully benefit from Pathway. But as you can see, the initiative will target novice level through intermediate level courses. We are running 2 pilots right now, and I say we, and it's truly the church education system working hand in hand with self-reliance services. And we're running one, which we started in Santiago, Chile, and we're running 2 of them in Lima, Peru. We have different sets of products. It's not just a single product, but the idea is that some of those will be available for implementation in 2017. What we have seen already in Santiago and Lima is just fascinating. It's like a Pathway little brother for those who are not capable or have the ability to truly benefit from pathway at the English level at which the courses are. So that is the most exciting part of the initiative. You can think of this English language instruction as pre-pathway English, preparing these students. I know that a lot of students, I know in my teaching group, and several of the ones I participated before, they always say, well, but you know, why do we get students who are really barely able to masticate the language while a few truly do so well? In fact, they shouldn't be in pathway L. Have you experienced any of that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So that is precisely why that initiative becomes so powerful. So now let me talk briefly about some things that are important, but let me start with a question. The question is very simple. Can anyone recite the Olympic motto? And as I said, it's a hendiatris, and it is in Latin. Hendiatris means 1 in 3, usually a figure of speech in which 3 words can help to convey an idea. Anyone? I mean, I thought it was a lot simpler when the Olympics are coming up. Anyone knows it, but is scared. I know Matt Richards is a little scared. He knows it. But anyway, because this is just to prove a point, it is Siltius Altius Fortius, which means faster, higher, stronger. Another hendiatris that you may be familiar with is Julius Caesar. What is it? Veni Vidi Vici, exactly. So that's why it was very simple for you to guess it, but you didn't. So I'm disappointed. So lunch will no longer be. No, but the reason why I came up with a hendiatris for the changing face of our students is because I want to compare typical students whom you might know. They are in your ward and you see them, you went to high school with them, and you see their kids, et cetera, to the people we are now teaching, the brothers and sisters across the globe, we are teaching now internationally. Inferius, lower, a socioeconomic demographic which could be considered the poorest of the poor. We are talking about people who can barely get by with less than $1 per day. We're not talking about, yeah, you know, in my neighborhood, we have some people who struggle. No, we are really, I want you to completely change your paradigm and think we're talking about the poorest of the poor who may go by in life with only 1 meal, very light meal per day. We are serving also reaching higher, Altius, individuals with advanced degrees. Have you ever had maybe a Russian who has a master's or a PhD, or you know, someone that you're wondering what the heck, what are they doing in halfway? You know, but we are reaching in different ways because some of them want to change careers, they want to find a new path. Some of their degrees in the former Soviet Union are no longer really valid. Some in Latin America simply want to do something else because what they studied is no longer relevant. And Latius, wider because this is not truly the case of online instruction, which you've started with. Maybe you taught over 30, maybe a 54-year-old, a 62, etc. But as a campus, which is what President Gilbert emphasized, the mentality is always the 18-year-olds, the 20-year-olds. By 24, they become a little weird. They are here by 26, then really we get concerned. But the median age of pathway students is 33. So truly, you are dealing with adults who are much more responsible at times, but who have jobs and families and callings and a lot of quite busy lives. So I hope that you take that into account when you are dealing with them. That being said, look at that beautiful picture. We have active is a site that has current students this semester, spring semester. Open site is a site which may have been open before, it had students before, but currently it does not. We have 190 active sites internationally. By definition of international, Canadians are your brethren and sisters. They are not international, according to Pathway. So this is basically anything outside of the US and Canada. We have 190 active sites and 58 open sites. And those open sites, we are working very hard. And actually, I don't work that hard, but I have 4 of my managers here today. They are the ones who are working very hard to continue to grow that number. Not because I get a bonus at the end of the year, but because we know and we have seen personally how it changes lives completely. And it's a beauty. And we are in lots of locations. I mean, we are all over the globe. In fact, this, who can tell me what this is right here? Joni, you cannot say. Right here.
Philippines.
Philippines. Great. How many islands are there in the Philippines? Okay, don't answer anything. There's 2. Okay, 2, all right. Are there more than 1,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there more than 5,000? Joni?
High tide or low tide?
Let's go low tide.
7,104. 7, sorry.
Okay, so yeah, Philippines, we are launching the Philippines this fall. It's so exciting. But you will not recognize a place right here.
Qatar?
Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We are launching this fall as well. Can you imagine in an Arab country, Pathway will be there and subsequently BYU-Idaho Online? That is a miracle. It is amazing. We are very, very excited about that. Now let me give you a few snapshots. Pathway has served, as of spring semester, over 45,000 students. We are in 45 countries. Right now, we have about 10,000, a little more than 10,000 students. 59% of those are married. Internationally, it's a little bit different. Only 49 versus 64% in the US and Canada. As I mentioned, 33 is the average age. Internationally, we have a younger demographic, a little bit younger demographic, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of old folks as well. We, in fact, did not start offering or emphasizing 31 plus for the first 3 years of Pathway operation. So I'm sure that that will change a little bit as we grow. But what I really want you to look at is right now, out of this figure, which is spring semester, we have 3,390 students internationally. But I want to also give you some relevant information. Out of all international students, 84% are in Latin America and the Caribbean. And that is only the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, because as you know, we have Haiti and Trinidad and Tobago, and we have Jamaica, which are, if you think they speak Spanish, they don't. French. There's other islands speak Dutch, but this is just those that speak Spanish. And I will not make any jokes about whether they speak Spanish in the Dominican Republic, because Puerto Rico is nearby, and my wife is from Puerto Rico. So we'll move on quickly and say that out of the total international students, 62% of them speak Spanish. That's why I figured that we might as well just do this in Spanish. But then I got some nasty views from the Filipino, and 22% speak Portuguese. Those are growing. Brazil is humongous, as you know, but we have Brazil against all the rest of Latin America. So while Brazil is growing pretty fast, the other countries in Latin America are growing as well. So I think that ratio will remain like that for a while. But overall, 84% will also remain like that or probably grow, because we have many more members in Spanish-speaking countries and Brazil than we do in other locations. The only difference will be what? That I just gave you a clue about. The Philippines. The Philippines is a huge area. It's a full area of the church with 750,000 members plus and growing. So when that comes, then we'll have Cebuano and Tagalog and other languages competing for that. But basically, we are teaching a global audience. So let me now talk about some of the challenges faced by dealing with people from other countries and all over the globe, different socioeconomic demographic. I'll give you a clue of all of these things. So, but to get started, let me talk about instructors. So when our great friends at online and your TGLs and OCGs and 3GLs and B2Ds, because they change acronyms on us, and sometimes I get like, what is the what? But you are, in basic terms, expected to do three things. I mean, there's many more, and they quote 7 others, etc. But establish expectations. This is specifically as you teach and deal with students. Teach accountability, especially during pathway, and we're talking about GS 120L, and expect responsibility back from the students. So you may see that, well, you know, yeah, they're not accountable, and they're not very responsible, and they always have a, you know, an issue that comes up and all that. Keep that in the back of your mind. Think of the following things that I don't think your neighbors face or any of the other people that I mentioned up front will face. Brownouts and blackouts. In fact, I mentioned the terms to a friend and they said, what is that? You know, it is when all of a sudden the cities go dark, period. No electricity. That's a blackout. Brownouts, you know, it kind of is intermittent. It comes and goes. And if you're working online, have you ever been on your computer and something happens and you're in the middle of something and it's bye-bye? Believe me, I have been there. I had a research paper and it was not pretty. Travel time to a pathway site. What would you say some of the travel time or distance might be?
Some hours and hours, like 2 and 3 hours each.
Some of them are 2 and 3 hours. Ismar or guys, any Nathaniel? What is the longest you've heard?
You had to sleep over, so they go to the pathway gathering, and they would find either a missionary couple or somebody else, sleep at their house, and then go back the next day.
12-hour bus ride from Torreon.
12 hours, 12-hour bus ride. It's amazing. Some of the things that we hear, the sacrifices that people made, including in Russia. Ufa is not near Perm. And we had students who actually moved and lived in miserable conditions during the winter to be able to complete pathway. There are miracles across the globe and lots of sacrifice. So I'm just trying to convey that many times taking the hard line and being tough and because they're being accountable may not be the right thing. So I want all of you who teach to look deep in your heart and to follow your instincts and to do what is right. Spotty, expensive, and limited internet access. Bad. If you've ever been to Ghana, if you've ever been to Vanuatu, if you've been to other places that you may not know how to pronounce, sometimes it's not as simple as, well, I don't know why they didn't log in on time. Shifting work schedules. In a lot of countries, you know, it's not like regular 8 to 5, so I plan my day around. I just come home and eat a good meal, and then I'll do my studies later from my own high-speed internet connection, my own laptop, et cetera, et cetera. Significant language barriers. As we said, we do not have, have you heard of a Pell? It doesn't work very well. It is not an extremely reliable measure of English proficiency. And you probably have experienced it in your classes when you get someone who can barely communicate. So because of it, sometimes we do have to be a little bit more patient because we let them in. We somehow made the mistake that we've been trying very hard to correct. And I'll talk about that. Technical savvy. Some people have never seen a computer. one of the most amazing pictures I have is the first time I went to Ghana and introduced the program and everything else. I had a laptop. And some of you may have seen the photo. It is in a few of the brochures. But the laptop is in the middle. And I have the crowd of Ghanaians going like this. Some of them had never seen a laptop, ever. So while it may be easy for you, well, you should have told me and sent me an email, or you should have done this, be more responsible. Sometimes that's not the answer. So I want to ask, what is the opposite of justice? Oh, I knew it. Boom. Justicia y piedad. Yeah, mercy and justice. No, it is not. The opposite of justice is injustice. But somehow within the church lingo, because of the scriptures and what they teach us, we get very confused. And well, we should just know mercy cannot rob justice, or vice versa. So what I'm telling you is many instructors have been very unjust in their efforts to say that mercy cannot rob justice, or vice versa. Because flexibility requires mercy. But when you put injustice in the middle, that's why Lady Law here is blindfolded, and there is on one side justice and the other one is injustice, not mercy. So just keep that in mind. So some of the challenges faced by students and by instructors at the same time, because you deal with the students and you're responsible for them, inconsistency of English language proficiency. But that's why we're so excited that part of the initiative is a new full assessment that will be valid across all CES institutions, that will be calibrated properly so that we only get those in pathway who are ready linguistically, so that we have one less thing to worry about. Having native or near native English speakers mixed with ESL students. Have you had that issue? Where all of a sudden someone is bored out of their minds telling you, well, I speak perfectly and I write well and I did this and that. Well, if you catch him early, tell him to call the PSC, the pathway support, and request to be changed. Hey, I'm a native speaker from Oklahoma, but I'm in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico, because my family came. Well, yeah, you should have joined the GS 120, not the L. And on the other hand, if they are already in, and they tried and they couldn't do it, or they didn't try, but they're already in, President Gilbert talked beautifully this morning. They are there to build others up, to help them. So give them a responsibility. Do a little more. Just do your assignments. It'll take you probably 83% less time than to the ESL students, and then focus on blessing lives. Help them. Plagiarism. Everyone talks about plagiarism. But your responsibility is that you need to teach students what it is, because some of them have no clue what it is. Late work, be very specific about deadlines. Because in some cultures, deadlines are not that important. Relationships are.
It's gray area.
It's a gray area. I know a guy. So you have to be very, very specific. And also be patient at the beginning. They're learning the concept. Variation in length of their answers. Some of them will give you a big blurb. Some of them just give you very little. Sometimes you set some expectations. Even those who struggle, tell them what to expect. Tell them in numerical value. You know, give me 3 more sentences, or give me at least 150 words in your answers, and give them an example. Because some of them are not as sophisticated to go in Word and count. I have 343 words in my area. They just don't know how to do that. So give them a sample. So now with that, the best part of the morning has come. I get to close my mouth and Beverly takes over. But if you have questions about anything that I have spoken about, save them and ask Beverly at the end. Then she'll be delighted to answer all of them.
You have to show me how to use this.
Or you want me to
Well, you can
click
do it
for
for
you?
me too.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Well, as he said, I'm Beverly Gates and I'm James' wife, and I'm gonna be as entertaining as he is. He has been until now, but when he and I were talking about what to present to you as far as our presentation today, we thought it would be a good idea to share some suggestions and tips in regards to what you can do to connect more effectively with your pathway students, and with specifically for GS120L. I've been teaching GS120L for the past 4 years. And even though I don't claim to have all the answers, because I know it's a hard course to teach, especially with all the things that Gene shared with all of us, that it's been so great to hear from him. I guess I do have some tips that I've used in the past years that can actually help you to have a more meaningful time teaching and for the students to actually enjoy being with pathway. So with that in mind, we can just get started. And by the way, I'm from Puerto Rico, so if you hear an accent here and there, that's where it's from. Anyway, the first one that I can think about is do provide specific feed forward and feedback. And so I don't know about you, but I had never heard the term feed forward until I attended an OLT conference about 3 years ago. And I thought it was a fascinating concept. I had heard a lot about feedback, but feed forward was something new. And so how does feed forward apply to GS120L? Well, if you look at that question that I have up there, what are some mistakes that your students continue to make every semester? I just found that as I was teaching GS120L, there were some things that continued to be repeated. And so I found myself giving the same exact feedback individually to all these students. And then I thought, well, when I learned about the feed-forward approach, you can actually think about those things that your students are struggling within your their quizzes or their vocabulary, quizzes and tests. And maybe you can do something to prevent those things from happening. And so I use the feed-forward approach. When the lesson number 5 comes about the SMART goal, when they have to set up their SMART goal, I find that sometimes they don't really know how to set up a SMART goal. And their goals are really, really general. And so even though the lessons specify details as to what a SMART goal is, like I share with my students a little chart, maybe the week before lesson 5, which is I think that's when the SMART goal comes in. They still don't really understand how to set up a SMART goal. So what Gene and I have been doing is we share an example of what a SMART goal is versus a more general goal. And sometimes I take their most general goal and turn it into a SMART goal for them to see what the difference is and how they can differentiate the more general from the more specific. And I'm sure maybe a lot of you have already been doing this, but it's just a great idea to show examples so that they see things through an example than maybe relying on a big paragraph that they have to read and one more thing that they have to read about on top of all the assignments that they have to read. I also use the feed-forward approach. Just a second part. When I'm explaining vocabulary, there's some words that they continue to miss when they're asked to come up with a sentence. And I need to teach them, what that letter of parentheses means. And sometimes I use it as a noun instead of using it as a verb. Right? For instance, the word to perfect. There's that word that comes up every semester, and I see they miss it every time, using it as a noun. And so how can I prevent that using the feed-forward approach? I tell them about it. I just kind of say, next week you're going to run into this word. And many times, many of my students have used it as a noun, but I really want you to focus and use it as a verb because that's what it's been asked. And so little things like that you can actually do for your students to help them not miss those points and to actually help you not have to be so repetitive, and you can focus on your teaching and giving meaningful feedback and not have to repeat all these things over and over. So I also use the feed-forward approach can also be used on when you're explaining course expectations. You can actually, if you explain things carefully before the course starts, you're going to actually cut down on all the amount of emails that you're going to receive from your students. And so I try to explain my course expectations as much as I can. In the beginning, I usually share a sheet, a class info sheet, and I actually add it as an attachment on the bottom of my notes. And the reason why I do that is because I know that a lot of times, like Gene was mentioning, they don't have access to the internet constantly. And so if they have a way to just download that document and just maybe get back to it when they can, if they actually own a laptop, or they could actually print it if they could. And so that way they can take the time to read those expectations that I have for them at a later time without having to depend on having that internet connection to read about the course and to know what's expected of them. And I usually I tell them in my sheet that I do for them, I tell them about what I expect, from weekly gatherings, what's as far as the gatherings, sometimes they don't know what an excused absence is or an unexcused. So I give them examples of what's okay to, when it's okay to miss a gathering, when it's not okay. So all of those things I provide for them in the beginning, just to clarify things. Okay, and of course we've all heard about feedback. Not only for international students, feedback is just very, very important. But what I've noticed in the past with teaching GS-120L is that they really appreciate feedback on grammar. They really want to be corrected. And regardless of what you've read in the past about corrections being detrimental to student self-esteem or whatever, as far as GS-120L, they really want to be corrected. And the reason being is because many of these students are not really taking pathway because they want to change careers or because they want to join their local community center. They're joining pathway because they really want to improve their English and they want to be more marketable that way. So from the moment they join pathway, they really want those corrections. And so you could either do that through correcting. Usually what I do is try to correct their vocabulary quiz. I take those sentences and as much as I can give them feedback on that. But that can get really tiring. It can be depending on the number of students you have in your section. Or you can actually keep track of the errors that they've been making through the week. And I haven't used this every semester. It depends on what level of English, because it changes from section to section as I'm teaching. And so if I think that it's going to help them, I actually keep track of common errors that they've made during the week. And I usually just do it real simple. I just have a piece of paper and just kind of jot them down. And at the end of the week, I collect them into a little sheet and I share that in my notes. And you can actually do that every week if you wanted. And that's the way of giving them feedback on their grammar. And they really, really like that. They appreciate that a lot. Okay. All right, so moving on to number 2. So find out where your students are from and do a little research on those cultures. And I find this I'm lucky that I know quite a bit about Latin culture being from Puerto Rico. And ever since we moved to the United States, I've had the opportunity to meet lots of people from different places. But if you're not very familiar with the Latin culture, with cultures in general, I suggest that you take the time to learn a little bit about those countries that your students are from. And you can actually use that in your discussion boards as a way to connect with your students. And this is just an example of an introduction that one of my students provided in the discussion board. His name was Sergio. My friends call me Checho. I'm from Peru, in Lima City, the capital of my country, yada yada. And so a good response would be, hello Sergio, it's nice to meet you. I'm so excited to have you in our class at this time. Pathway is an inspired program that will truly bless your life. Your English skills and testimony will be strengthened as you commit to studying and doing what's required to succeed. Do not hesitate to contact me with your questions. And so I think we could all agree that that's a decent response, a good response that we gave the students in the discussion board, right? So how could we make that response a little bit better so that we can connect with our student a little better? I basically kept it all the same, but I added some things. I said, hello, Sergio, I'm excited to have you in our class at this time. Peru is one of those countries that I've always wanted to visit someday. I can't wait to go there and eat some authentic papas a la huancaína and ceviche. Now, I did not know about this before I talked to the student. I actually took the time to maybe research a little bit about Lima, Peru, because I wanted to connect a little bit better with them. And they feel that. Being an ESL student myself, when I attended BYU Provo, I do remember those teachers that actually took the time to talk to me about Puerto Rico, to tell me something about San Juan, and to tell me how much they loved rice and beans when they were down in Cooks, for instance. And so, I really remember that. And so if you can make a memorable impression on these students by researching a little bit about where they're from and including that as you're interacting with them in your discussions, I think it's a great idea. And it's actually good for enriching our cultural awareness. So, okay, next. All right, so we've heard a lot about visuals, and if you've attended OLT conferences before, there's been great presentations on how to use visuals, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I have found that through visuals, our students get their attention faster, they can increase their language understanding, they can clarify, discuss material, and they can clear up confusion. And an example that I have of that, of course, you probably all already know LDS or has great memes that we can use to spice up our notes and to make it more enticing to the eye when we're looking at that monitor. I've used on splash.com. It has all these words and free pictures that you can totally download and use and turn into memes if you wanted. You can, don't neglect the use of, don't forget to use different fonts and styles and colors and sizes to present your message. You want to, a lot of these students have already a lot to read, and when they read your notes, I don't want them to see my notes as another chore that they have to do. I want them to look forward to reading something fun and interesting, and that'll get their attention right away. And when you do that for visuals, it happens. You can actually get more information into them for a visual than by just giving them this big paragraph full of words that they have to actually figure out by themselves. I wanted to tell you about this website called iPixie.com that I totally love. You can actually create your own memes in there. Like if you have beautiful pictures you want to integrate into your teaching, it's free, and you can actually upload your pictures. You can make different designs on there. You can create anything you want to present your announcements, to present any notes that you want to share with them on your notes. And it's very user-friendly. If I can use iPixie, you can all use it. And this is an example of what I created. This is actually my son's mission. And he sent me that picture, and I looked at it and thought, oh, it's just calling for a quote or a scripture. And so I added that scripture using that iPixie.com. And I sent it to him, and that thinks I'm pretty cool. I put a meme for him. So, anyway, is that the okay. All right, do communicate using videos. And this is something that I just started doing this semester. So, if you're new at teaching DSL, don't feel like you have to do all of these things at once. It's a lot of information, a lot of things to add on, so just take one thing at a time. So videos I actually added on this last semester. And the reason why I did that was because my students in their midterm evaluations, they kept telling me they would like to see me with Skype. And I'm not really fond of doing Skype because I like to do my own schedule, and that's the beauty of teaching online. And so I thought, well, the closest thing that I can do that is not Skype would be a video. And so videos have been great for them to hear my voice, to see my face, and to actually have some kind of interaction with them. And so what I've tried doing this semester is to provide just a short video with my notes that I actually, and I provide a link for them, so they actually can hear instead of me writing a bunch of notes for them every week, I try to record some of it into the video so that just to make it more enticing, more entertaining. And of course, you all know about Gene, screencasts. I've also used Voki. Does anybody know about Voki? Have you ever used Voki before? You can actually create your own little avatar, your own little person, and you can actually add your voice to it. So it's just something really fun and interesting that they'll find fun. Maybe I like it, maybe some of you are too fancy and that would be too much for you. But you can actually create someone even similar to you. I tried to create someone close to me. My kids were making fun of me because she looked darker than I was, and I was trying to come up with this Latina person, and she doesn't quite look a lot like me. But you can actually add your voice to that. It's really fun for the students. And of course, videos that I've actually created a YouTube channel, and I just upload them on there. And what I do is I provide the link on my notes, and to make it not as boring, just to have a bunch of letters and numbers that make up the link, I capture a picture from my video and I add it to my notes, and then I put the link to that picture. And so when they click on the picture, it takes them to my YouTube channel, and they can watch the video. So
would you use those semester to semester, or will you create new ones?
You know what? I'm thinking of creating new ones because I really wanted to see the way that I looked then. Mm-hmm. There's some that you could actually probably repeat, like if you make a video maybe explaining the water calculator, which is something that I'm planning on doing, because a lot of them, I keep getting all these emails asking me, should I continue in the course? Where am I at in the course? Can you help me figure out if I should just drop it or just move on? So I just guide them to the water calculator. So that is one video that I'm planning on doing and adding to my.
Because it's not an island. Yeah, it's not an island.
Oh, it isn't? Oh, okay. Never mind then. So I'm not going to do that.
Oh, you don't want questions in that. Is there advantage to these over, there is a tutorial that I went through for the web calculator, so with a visual, like what our training team has created, be better or worse for language English. It's like a written visual.
Oh, maybe that would work. Yeah. You tell me that we need to. It's like telling me. So we'll get to that at the end. So we'll come back to your questions, so remind me. Okay. All right. It's only 10 after 12. So okay. So do share U.S. traditions with your students, and this is something that I've done in the past. So if you're teaching in the fall, take the time to share with them some traditions from the U.S. because they love to hear about those. Then I usually share something about Thanksgiving. I've also in the past shared some things about Cinco de Mayo, which is, it has completely become a U.S. holiday, even though it came from Mexico, I guess. But a lot of people don't really understand what we're really celebrating. All we think about is just eating tacos and maybe some people drinking tequila. They're not members, I don't know, on Cinco de Mayo. But so they really want to know about your culture, and they really encourage that in your interactions with your students. So, my next one, and this is probably a very important one, is use neutral language and explain terminology properly, because a lot of times we don't realize that we're using terms and words that when translated, they don't translate the same. And so here's an example of how Gene, he actually shared this with me. He was explaining the term to drop the course. If you think about the term dropping the course, you know that email that we're encouraged to send before the time comes. If you think about that term, I mean, if you translate that literally, it doesn't really mean anything to drop the course, really. And so Gene, he put in parentheses, he put it in Spanish, and he put it in Portuguese, which is the advantage of knowing a little bit of Spanish. You can actually do that. Although you're not encouraged to communicate with them in Spanish, but if you want to make a point on a certain term, it is advisable that you do that. And so it is important to be as neutral as you can when you're communicating with your students. All right, and of course, patience with our students. What seems common usage to them may be rude or unacceptable in the U.S., and the opposite can be the same. Always assume that your students have good intentions and that any unusual language choices may simply reflect communication problems rather than disrespect or carelessness. And so with that, I have an experience. I mean, this last midterm evaluation that we received, I had a student, and I want to say it was a she because I can't see a guy telling me what she told me on her evaluation. But she actually said that my videos were not professional, and that she could actually see the background of my kitchen and my living room in the videos, and that I didn't have enough makeup on and my hair wasn't done, and that I didn't look professional. and so when I read that, I was like, really? I mean, she only knew that I shoot these videos on Sunday because that's like the day that I look my best for church. And so anyway, it was actually totally funny, but then I could have taken it the other way. I could have thought, should I set this student straight and let her know that, I'm going out of my way to do all these videos, and this is not something required for a GS 120L instructor to do. But then I chose to go the other way. I figured that if she's sharing that with me, she's trying to help me. And so I'm learning from all these different comments that I get from students that I truly love and learn from.
The following Sunday, she had extensions.
And last but not least, how many of you speak a second language? Just out of curiosity. Okay, great. And so, even though this is not a requirement for teaching GS 120L, it does help to learn a second language. And so, good to know, only 18% of Americans speak more than one language. 53% of Europeans speak more than one, and usually more than one, like 3 or 4. And we have about 84% of Pathway International students, like as Jean mentioned, that speak Spanish or Portuguese. So if you want to choose a language to learn at this time, choose Spanish. And I'm not biased to anybody.
If anything, it'll help you realize how difficult it is to write in another language.
Exactly. And it will help you, as I said, we'll go to the benefits, the next one. So benefits of learning a second language, I say Spanish is the highest percentage that we're seeing on the board. Is having an idea of how the sentence structure works in Spanish will help you to better understand little writing. And so I just have an example there, the importance and the progress of our studies, personals, and spirituals. When you read that and you think, why in the world are they adding S's to the adjectives? Why is the adjective after the noun? And so if we have the basic concept of how the Spanish language works, you're going to be better able to understand a lot of these paragraphs that they're giving to you and not just be clueless when you're reading these things they're trying to provide for you. And so I want you to all take your phones right now and download that Duolingo app and do 3 minutes a day of Spanish. In 6 months, you'll be a pro, I promise. And so with that, let's recap. So provide specific feedback, study students' countries and cultures, use visuals, communicate through video, share U.S. traditions with them, use neutral language and explain terminology, show patience, and learn a second language. And that is my presentation for today. Now I'm going to turn the time over to Jean for questions. And we have about 10 minutes to do that, and then we're ready for lunch, right?
You can stay here, because I think they're gonna ask you something.
Oh, if it's
Go ahead.
for me, I'll get up. Yeah, I'll sit down.
Okay, great. Yes, here, and then we'll go back.
You mentioned that your L students who are in another country, but they are prepared for the non-L class. What about our domestic students that maybe need the L class? What can we do for them?
It is the exact same thing. So they should be, we should recognize who they are as they are applying. And if it is someone from a different country who moved to the US, we cannot assume that because they are applying from New York, that they will speak English perfectly. So they have to, we have filters by which we should be able to catch them, give them a test, the assessment that we're talking about, and then be able to help them. Now, the problem many times is that they fall through the cracks, or that the assessment, as I said, is not truly spitting out what it should. So sometimes you have anomalies. But the thing is that as soon as someone realizes, especially the first week of class, that someone shouldn't be in the class either way, they should immediately try to send them to pathway support for further help. That's the only way thus far. Jason?
Hey, I haven't heard anything about Oaxaca yet, so I was kind of...
It's coming.
It's coming, okay, all
It's
right.
coming, right before food. But if you have, we'll go back. We'll go here, and then we'll go
No, I
back.
do have a real question.
Yeah.
Are they doing speaking partners still as they're going
Yeah.
through this?
Yeah, they still have a speaking partner assignment. They have a peer partner assignment as well. There used to be an hour of speaking partner assignments, but that was reduced, and the peer partner concept, which is local, you practice with a friend, was added, but it's still there.
Okay.
Yes.
Just kind of a question of cultural politeness and what's
Yes.
polite, what's not. I've noticed that some of my students are very careful to call everyone brother and sister, and others call them by first name. You know, as instructors, what's the best practice? Should we be calling them by their first name, or should we be addressing them as brother, sister, or such and such?
Great. Well, I guess Tori wants to
Yeah,
jump
well,
in
to add on
and
to that, I
answer the
also
question.
have, I've noticed that my ESL students, they add in the name of Jesus Christ and then I've seen that as a pattern as well.
So culturally, I don't think there's anything that would tell you exactly why they say do one thing versus another. Obviously, they are very respectful. Most Latin Americans tend to show respect for the elders. And in Spanish, you have the usted and the tú, the formal and informal. And many times that translates almost immediately that they want to address you as, if you were their instructor and they are Spanish speakers and you were doing Spanish, they would address you usted out of respect. And as such, many times they tend to just call you brother or sister. Now, for the first few years, I always was Brother Hayes. But at the end of the day, I'm Gene. So my last couple classes, I signed Gene, and I open it up and say, call me Gene, please. And I hope that when those who started calling me Gene and feeling more comfortable with me go to the next, I hope that you never correct them because they don't call you sister or brother, whatever, because that then would be really detrimental. Many times when they break the ice, they are able to call you by your first name. It is because they feel very comfortable with you. And if in return you go back and say, don't call me that, that wouldn't go very well. So we'll go here, I think, and then here.
I was actually just going to respond to her question. I just ask the students a lot of time, what would you prefer I call you, especially when they have 6 or 7 names.
Yeah, going the other way, call me crazy. I always call them by their first name or their first preferred name. I never call them, unless I am addressing all of them, I may call them brothers and sisters, but otherwise I call them by their first name, and that is acceptable here and in China. So, but I don't disagree. If you want to ask and you want to remember each of their preferences, great. But as she said, some have 6 names, and if they tell you, I'd rather you call me by my 6 names, then good luck. You had a question.
We've heard a lot here that YouTube is a big issue. And yeah, I hear a lot of instructors using it. Aren't we seeing students that are running into that at the state centers and stuff that can't use it? I know we are locally. Is that not true internationally?
Well, it was mostly true internationally a few years ago, but YouTube has done, you know, a lot of things as of late, and the church itself has cleaned up the filters. So the reality is that not a lot of people are running into those problems that were like 4 years ago or 5 years ago that we used to hear. Now, the beauty is that if someone does run into them, this is just an extra resource, and unfortunately then they wouldn't be able to do that. Nathaniel?
Another thing is if you embed the video into iLearn, it's better, because then you don't have, then it doesn't.
Then they don't have to go out to the
And
internet.
Island 3 doesn't like Gene.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you guys.
Doesn't like Gene?
Doesn't like Gene.
There's a lot of things that iLearn 3 doesn't like. That's why I don't like iLearn. So it's very reciprocal.
It has a good one built in. It's screencast-o-matic really works well.
Yeah.
But I just,
Cut
Kaltura is great.
through works.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I think along the way. I think these are just the ideas. You find the tool that works. Someone else had a question to you? Yes.
Yeah, I kind of hear under just the idea, I'm doing some secondary research here on just cultural readiness, and hopefully in the end we'll be able to create a kind of top 10 list for designers especially, in how to create courses and instructors, and how to be culturally ready and aware. So what would you say in course design? How can we help? How can we help in course design to help with some of these ideas that you've presented, but also just to help the course itself be more culturally ready?
That's an incredible question. I think that you probably have noticed how the church, and I mean the top leadership of the church, has shifted, if you can call it a shift, or I'd rather say emphasize, since President Uchtdorf came to the first presidency. They talk much more naturally. They become much more human. They are able to speak in different ways, and they are appealing to a larger crowd. This sister, I don't know who she is. She has tattoos all over the place, and she wrote a book, and she's a blogger. And Fox, yeah. So it's pretty new. 15 years ago, she would have never been the highlight ever of anything that was really official church related. Now you see that is changing. So in regards to your question, which is complex, and whatever my view would be, develop, whoever you are, become much more aware yourself. Read up the world news. Not everything that Fox says is true, especially if you're in a Mormon environment. Everyone follows the crowd easily. Just whatever they say, the opposite view is bad, and Obama is the Antichrist, and this and that, and become more aware. Read the world news. Go to the BBC, which is very impartial, and then read up and learn about different cultures and places. And I think that's where it starts. There is not one thing that a single developer can do, but the whole culture, as it changes and we become more global minded, then I think that naturally that will happen. Other questions? We have a few more minutes. Yes.
When you had the list of obstacles that international students face, I understand the point of being flexible. Sometimes I think I err on the side of being too flexible. I'm just wondering if you could address the balance of having high expectations, because one of the requirements is having a good internet connection, of having, these attending gatherings.
Agreed.
So balance.
I have never personally regretted being flexible with a student, ever. But I have, the few times I think I was trying to, do something, that I've regretted it, because I've gone back, and at the end of the day, if you look at the purposes of Pathway and what Pathway is all about, it's about blessing lives. And if by my inflexibility or stubbornness or maybe misunderstanding, yes, you can still be responsible, you can still teach them, whatever, but you can be very flexible. So I found that balance, You are the best judge as to. At some point, I tried to influence and tell people what the right balance was. They were always, especially originally before we had a lot of people, there were like 3 or 4 of us. They were always kind of, what should we do about this and that? You know, I tried to provide some guidelines and ideas, but at the end of the day, that doesn't work. You will have to follow the spirit, but you will just have to, you know, I think Beverly said it. Exercise common sense and good judgment, my goodness. I've been very frustrated at times when they tell me, well, my instructor, I get a copy on some of those things. My instructor said that because her TGL told her whatever, well, don't tell your TGL. If there's something that is going to bless someone and you feel good about, just do it. And you're going to get me going now, and really, I'm going to keep it here for a while.
I think my wife's from South Africa, watched her do pathway and then getting her associate's degree this summer. She's from South Africa, and she has a really different sense for how these things work. And I've seen her get into these patterns where she procrastinates things, and then she always is asking for an exception every single time. So as an online instructor, I step back. As a husband, I step very far back. As an online instructor, I would say, you know, taking time to personally address that and say, you know, maybe I've noticed this is kind of a pattern. Maybe there's something we could talk about, or, you know, just be open and address it directly.
Excellent. Yeah, that's one thing that, thank you, Matt, for saying that. Matt is a smart man. That's why Mickey used to be a boxer. So, don't think he's that smart. He's just really, but what you mentioned is totally true. Don't think I'm a softie by telling you to be flexible. I am very direct. In fact, with your international students, you have to be extremely direct at times. And sometimes you just have to tell them without political correctness, you know, and don't offend them. Then you have to tell them really, really directly. If they keep doing that, and I have been very, very clear. I have a, so anyway, yeah, don't misinterpret that I'm saying that guy is just a softie, because I'm not. But I do understand that balance of justice, lady justice. I try to do that. 2 questions back there.
So a different topic in the last minute. You've talked about how to help higher level students and get them in the right class.
Yeah.
What would you advise us to do with those who are really struggling and while we're waiting for that pre-pathway English student?
Yeah, so right now, sometimes you just have to be very blunt, and maybe you need to allow them to keep hope that there's, you know, maybe they join knowing that they were not ready. We let them in and they feel trapped, but you have to really make them think, what is going to bless you the most? Are you still, even if you are not doing well, and are you being blessed by just being here and praying with a group of people and struggling? Is that blessing you? Or would it be better to drop before the drop deadline? And that's why Beverly just mentioned one thing. I have a message before the deadlines to drop courses, and I target those students who have Fs and who are not getting it. And I send an email very personal to them, and I translated, you are welcome. I don't speak French. I may say bonjour, and I can do a few things. Portuguese and Spanish, as I said the story. But because I knew that I had a couple students from Jamaica and one from Haiti, I went to Google Translate and provided a translation to them so that they can take action. Many times it's misunderstood, and I created that thing because I told them, don't ever, because instructors don't ever communicate in their native language. But that was addressing a completely different thing. That we had some return missionaries who were speaking partners and who served in somewhere in Latin America, and they were trying to, during the speaking partner, practice their own Spanish. So I was like, please don't. There's a rule. Don't ever do it. But by golly, if you speak Spanish or Portuguese and you have someone from Brazil struggling, and you can give them a 1 or 2 liner so that clearly they know what to do to drop the course on time, so that they are not in debt and that they are not just sailing their fears away to an F, then please do so. It makes perfect sense. The rule was, don't do it consistently and constantly all the time with everybody. because the course is in English. Nathaniel?
Notice that he doesn't, I mean, that he has students with Fs. He's not Mr. Softy I mean, if the student is not meeting the objectives and not producing the outcomes that correspond to certain grades, then don't, by all means, that's their grade. You know, so don't do things that totally affect their grades. I mean, that's the way that they get into BYU-Idaho is with a 3.0 GPA. And if somebody is totally unprepared to get into BYU-Idaho, they should be performing at below 3.0. So don't change your grades as you're flexible, but be flexible and understand their situation. Try to understand the situation, and then give them all the information that they need.
Perfect. Well, you are all very polite Americans. You could have gotten up and run as soon as maybe some Canadians or whomever. But the reality is that I appreciate the great interaction, wonderful questions. I don't know what she told me. What did you say?
You still have questions that you want to address.
If you have questions, you want to address whatever, email Beverly. But I really thank you. I hope that at least you got some ideas and something out of it. And at least probably wasn't the most boring one you were able to attend. So thank you so much.